immigrant, that we welcome the stranger, that we carry out our command under Matthew 25. And the resolution itself is lovely. It's on the diocesan website, and it's a pledge to provide care, support, and advocacy for our newest neighbors, but also committing to education, organizing, legal direct action, and advocacy with state, local, and federal lawmakers to see continued advancement in immigration laws that meet the various needs of our newest neighbors. So it's a very large mandate, and this is a new program for the diocese. The bishop asked me in December if I would help him understand what the legal implications of being a sanctuary diocese were. What did declaring that about ourselves allow us to do within the bounds of legality? And so that's where my work began. I was researching, writing memos, which is really my most comfortable area. It's evolved to PowerPoints, but we all can grow in this. And it's evident that sanctuary as a term is not really legally meaningful. It doesn't provide protection for the people who are seeking sanctuary or for those who are providing it. So the term arrives out of a very old, I have such large ears, you would think it would stay. The term sanctuary is a very ancient one. It goes back to the earliest days of religious identity. And there was a time when the churches of England were separate from the realm of the king. And if someone was fleeing apprehension by law enforcement, they could run into a church. And it was essentially like entering a consulate. You were no longer in the realm of the king, you were in a separate place. They could not enter the church to come arrest you. Well, once Henry VIII kind of consolidated church and state, it really lost meaning, and there have been efforts to continue it, but it wasn't a legal defense. And most recently in the 80s, the 1980s, there was a change in asylum law that really made asylum absolutely impossible for people from Central America. Is that me clicking? I'm sorry. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. Just became aware of it. Maybe I'm waving. Okay. I think if I hold it. Anyway, so to make that description a little shorter, sanctuary remains not legally a defense. So with that understanding, what can we do, what do we offer, and how do we go about it, where the charge is facing us? So we knew coming into this that there was going to be a huge change in atmosphere. Trump had pledged to deport every, what he called, illegal immigrant in the country. So we knew we were going to have a lot of unfolding events ahead of us. We didn't know exactly what they would be, and we wanted to be prepared. What we didn't know at the time was that he would also attempt to deport people who were not here illegally. So the challenges became ever greater as the weeks unfolded. Whoops, sorry, this is a letter from our presiding bishop, which also emphasizes the importance to our church nationally of protecting and welcoming our immigrant fellows in our parishes. The presiding bishop really just emphasized that these are not strangers. They are us. They are our neighbors, our fellow parish members. And the first thing that happened on the day of inauguration was rescission of the sensitive locations policy, which we had expected. Sensitive locations are houses of worship, schools, libraries, And up to this point, there had been a policy, essentially a sanctuary policy, that curtailed the ability of ICE agents to enter into these spaces. So now, without that in place, we, oh, thank you, sorry. It's making me a little nervous. Yeah, thank you, okay. Can you hear me? Thank you, I apologize. It threw me off a little bit. So churches now are fair game for ICE enforcement. Churches are fair game for ICE enforcement. So we prepared materials for the parishes in the diocese. There are over 160 of them, on how to make our spaces safer, how to put up signage that would signal to ICE enforcement that they were not welcome to enter the churches for the purposes of civil law enforcement. We prepared materials for parishes running feeding programs and welcoming the public that would give guidance on how to respond if ICE came to the door. We had materials on how to identify a proper judicial warrant that would allow them to enter the space versus an administrative warrant, which would, which is not a legally, it doesn't empower them to enter the space. And above all, they are to call us if ICE comes to the door. The bishop felt very strongly that he did not want individual parishes and clergy to have to decide whether to let ICE in, whether a judicial warrant is valid. He didn't want those legal burdens to be placed on clergy. So our office stands available at any time if there is an issue to review the documentation and to make the decision whether ICE must be allowed to enter or whether they can be kept at bay. Sorry. We prepared these signs. These are actually quite large metal signs to be placed on the exterior of every parish. And it says, "We provide sanctuary for all. We do not consent entry to this property by any official conducting immigration enforcement actions. All enforcement required to visibly present a signed judicial warrant to enter property." So this is a warning to ICE that our parishes are private property. They're the property of the Episcopal Diocese of New York. They are not open to the public without invitation. That essentially we invite you all in to worship. And we do not invite you in to perform civil law enforcement actions. This is the approach that's been taken by most of the houses of worship around the country. And we additionally prepared this flow chart, and I don't expect you to read it, but it essentially shows you the decision-making steps. If ICE is at the door, it's to be posted by the door. And at the very bottom is, you call my cell phone number. Report it to me, the diocesan attorney, and then we'll make a decision at that point what to do. So the goal was to provide support so that the parishes don't feel they are alone in this, that we have their backs, and that together we can work through what is to come. This is a screenshot of a federal lawsuit we joined. And the purpose of this lawsuit was to challenge the rescission of the sensitive locations policy in January that I referred to earlier. It's still pending, it's on appeal. We were told by the judge essentially that ICE has not yet come into the churches, and so we haven't suffered any harm. And we've been monitoring everything that's happening, and there are increasing incidences of ICE activity in and around houses of worship. So I think it is very possible that down the line we will have a favorable ruling that finds that rescission of that sensitive locations policy burdens our free exercise of our faith. It clearly has already, because clergy and vestries have had to spend an inordinate number of hours parsing through what to do if ICE enforcement comes to their parishes. And that shouldn't be. They should not have to include that in the range of tools that they need to master in order to be an effective rector of a church. Fear of law enforcement is absolutely a burden on how we express ourselves and how we exercise our religion and who we welcome into our houses of worship. So I think just the fear alone is in fact a burden, but we'll see if the appellate court agrees with us. The district court did not. On the state front, we're pushing for a state law that would create a state protection of sensitive locations. And it's a very good law. It models a law that's already in place that protects our state courthouses. There are a number of immigration initiatives being put forward right now, and ours got a little bit, in the back of the line, but at the very end of the legislative session, there was suddenly a tremendous interest, and the hospitals came on board, and the teachers' unions came on board. So we are starting the new legislative session in a very strong position, and this is going to be one of the priorities this fall, is trying to get this bill through. So we will be asking all of you to write to your representatives, to put it on your social media, to talk about it, that we want a Protecting Our Sensitive Locations Act in the state of New York. It will go a long way toward resolving the fears that have taken hold in these locations. And as we're seeing, it's more than fear, it's actual enforcement activity. So this is still back in February. We held a wonderful interfaith service. It received a lot of media attention. The bishop was there. We had imams, we had rabbis, we had Buddhist priests. It was a really, it was a gathering. It was a real statement of the interfaith solidarity in New York City, because we are a city of migrants. And these issues are affecting everybody. They are affecting every faith. They are affecting every house of worship. So the service really expressed that. And we kept putting one foot in front of the other, very hopeful at this stage, that together we were going to be able to confront what happened. Well, just a couple of weeks later, the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University exploded into our lives. This was a shock, and it was a real wake-up call that the level of aggressive enforcement was going to be much higher than we had hoped. It was, and this, I think, was even higher than we had feared, which is why it hit us very hard. Mahmoud Khalil was a green card holder. He's not an illegal immigrant. If you think back to that first slide, he was going to deport all illegal immigrants. Mahmoud Khalil was legally here, married to a US citizen, and he was being arrested only because of something he had said. He hadn't committed a crime, he had simply expressed an opinion. And not everyone agrees with his opinion. But to us, that didn't matter. What mattered was that he was arrested for an opinion, and that strikes deeply at the heart of us as people of faith who have to be free to express ourselves and to express what we believe. Because if one person can be arrested for that, so can we. It can't be that that's a ground to take someone into detention and expel them from this country. So we filed an interfaith brief. We had scores of groups join us in district court, and he was released. So that was great. We are on appeal right now. We have another amicus brief due this week. So we'll be filing that in the Third Circuit, and we have, I think, far more groups joining us, because no one wants to have a situation where expression of speech can result in imprisonment and deportation. There's our brief. So then, all the funding for the Episcopal migration ministries became contingent upon their providing refugee services to Afrikaner farmers. And Presiding Bishop Rao declined. He rejected the federal funds and said that this was a bridge too far. We no longer had any of our refugees who had been approved and had been waiting for years to come into this country allowed. These were the only individuals that Episcopal migration ministries would be allowed to serve. And rather than do that and turn our backs on those who have been waiting, we severed our relationship with the Office of Refugee Resettlement on that front. So then in May, a detention center opened in Newark, Delaney Hall. And we learned very quickly that the conditions there were difficult. Faith leaders began to gather in solidarity and support of the detainees. And quite notably, the mayor of Newark was arrested along with a congresswoman. So now we have people being arrested for expressing opinions about conditions, and the congresswoman was trying to carry out her obligation to inspect, her right to inspect immigration detention centers. So this led to a new chapter in our advocacy. This is Ashley Gonzalez. She's the bishop's assistant for special projects. And Ashley was at Delaney Hall, and a woman came up to her who had been turned away from visiting her father. The woman had left Boston at dawn, driven all the way to Newark, and then was not allowed in because she was wearing jeans that had holes in them. So Ashley and the woman went to our van, and they traded pants. Ashley had on a lovely pair of wool pants, and she's wearing what we call the holy jeans. And the woman with now in Ashley's trousers was able to visit her father. So this is the level at which we began to move. You know, what practical things can we do to help? And faith leaders are at Delaney Hall with Pax Christi, New Jersey on an almost daily basis, and they are there with clothes, they are there with toys for the children, they are there with snacks and water for people who are put through an incredible gauntlet to try to see their loved ones. So this is a much darker turn. The arrests in the courthouses began. One of our Episcopal priests was arrested when he accompanied an individual to a hearing. He was released a few hours later, but again, the shockwaves were deep. So we are suddenly in the position of no longer preparing to protect our parishes and others against the incursion of ICE. We are now protecting ourselves. We hosted a mayoral forum on immigration, and very shortly after that, candidate Brad Lander was arrested in immigration court. That was very widely covered, and I'm sure many of you saw that. The bishop decided, Mahmoud Khalil was released. That was right after that. And we hosted a welcome home on the steps of the cathedral. And there he is with his wife, Noor, who had just had her baby. Sorry, okay. So now we're back in immigration court. These are members of the New Sanctuary Coalition. That's Ravi Rockbear on the far end, and then the Reverend Dr. Chloe Breyer Father Morrison, and I'm not familiar with the other person, but they are there nearly daily in the courts, and there are scores of volunteers who join them. They meet at a coffee shop across the street from the Immigration Center at about 7:45 in the morning, and they walk over there and see who needs help. And the bishop decided to join them. So here he is with members of New Sanctuary Coalition, the public advocate Juman Williams, Rabbi Hilly, one of our priests, Anne Marie Witchker. I mean, just a terrific group of people who spent a very intense day counseling people in the hallway and then accompanying a woman whose husband was detained. She was there with her daughter. And it was absolutely devastating to see this family who had come following all the rules. They had a court date. They went through the court hearing. The judge gave an adjourned date. Everything seemed to be going well. And then what happens is when you step out of the courtroom, you're taken into custody by ICE agents. There's no correlation and no coordination between what happens in the courtroom and what happens in the hallway. So you can have an adjourned date of a year out on your asylum petition and believe that that's the status you're in, but because of the harsh policies that are being handed down, ICE agents will take you into custody if, for example, you've been here less than 2 years. Or, I mean, there's a whole long list of reasons why they might do this, and sometimes there's no reason why they might do this. And that is definitely what we experienced here at the press conference after the visit in court. So no reason is what we experienced at the end of July. Our parishioner, Sue Go, who's the daughter of an Episcopal priest, Reverend Kiri Kim, had been asked to come to court on a visa matter. She was here as part of her mother's religious worker visa. Her mother's a very prominent Episcopal priest in Korea. She's worked in the diocese for several years, and she and Sue were here pursuant to that. And Sue was detained. Sue was detained. She was put into the holding center at 26 Federal Plaza. The conditions there are absolutely horrific. We have another parishioner who was detained there. He described the situation as being so crowded that people have to sleep like a stack of dominoes, you know, one body leaning on top of the other. There isn't room for each person to have a whole space of floor. Some of the men that he was with were sleeping under the urinal because that was the only open space, and it continued to be used throughout the night. I mean, just horrific. And some people are held there for up to 6 days. Sue and our other parishioner, Ketty, a Peruvian woman from Westchester County, the other St. Bart's in White Plains, was detained within hours of Sue. And Sue had an asylum petition pending. She expected to be given an adjourned date that would allow her to present her claim. She's never been convicted of a crime. She's a lovely woman. She ran a bakery. She was beloved by her parish. And she was detained. She was actually held with Sue in the same conditions. And Ketty has a very serious medical condition, and she did not expect to be detained, so she didn't have her medicine with her, and she very quickly became ill. So what happened here is that we had very quick thinking clergy, and they organized a rally in front of 26 Federal Plaza. And it was attended by a couple of hundred people who came on very short notice, and a huge number of press came. And here's Bishop Hyde, and there's Ashley Gonzalez of the Holy Pants right behind him. They asked people to bring flowers to put in a wall of remembrance for the detained. And the story really went viral. I think people were really shocked to learn that these are the kind of people who are being held in these conditions by our government. There was a story on CNN. Rachel Maddow had a very long opening piece on the Episcopal Diocese of New York and the situation for Sue and Ketty. And we reached out to everyone we could think of for help. We reached out to not only to the media, who were very responsive and really very helpful, but also to our elected officials, and the Korean government also was very helpful. Oh, sorry, I did not mean to do that. I was on that piece, but Congressperson Lawler was extremely helpful, and he remains very helpful. So Sue was released thanks to the efforts of all of these people. She's now back at Purdue. It looks as though things will be sorted out administratively. Ketty, however, remains in detention in Louisiana. She was in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks as soon as she got down there. One other piece, Sue and Ketty were on a bus being taken to the airport to Louisiana on the morning of the rally, and they actually passed by the rally. They saw it taking place, and the people at the rally had no idea that they were able to see them, but they did see them, and they knew that they were being kept in the thoughts of the diocese and the people who cared about them. But off they went to Louisiana, and the detention center down there is very difficult. Thankfully, as I said, Sue came home. Ketty has a hearing coming up at the end of this month, and we expect that an order of deportation will be entered against her. They've made the grounds for asylum very difficult to prove for someone in her situation who was a target of gang violence. It's regarded as not a government activity, and so the US government doesn't feel obliged to offer protection in these circumstances. So we find that our work is pivoting from providing what we thought would be ways to help people stay here and be fed and have access to services, to counseling on how to depart this country with some dignity so that they can plan ahead. With more than one parishioner who's been detained, they had not planned ahead. No one had keys to their apartment. No one had access to their paperwork. No one knew what to do. So much of our work now is pivoting toward preparing. How do we minimize the harm? How do we mitigate the impact when people are detained? Because people are being detained. And the reality is there is very little we can do to stop that. So we become witnesses. Our clergy continue to go to Federal Plaza. We have many volunteers who are helping people fill out paperwork to prepare. It's called family preparedness work. But we can't stop it. We are like the family of a person with a very serious illness. We cannot cure it, but we can do many, many things to help them feel loved and cared for and seen, and to help make things easier on this extremely difficult path. So, Multi-Faith Mondays, a very easy thing to do, 5:30 every Monday at Columbus Circle, a great interfaith gathering in support of our migrants. And here's Dean Winnie Varghese, the new dean of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. She'll be installed in 2 weeks on Saturday at 10:30 if you'd like to come up to the cathedral and help celebrate. She's been a terrific advocate for immigrants. We're working with her on making the Episcopal Federal Credit Union funds available for microloans, because the filing fees for individuals have been increased so dramatically that even where people are able to get help and fill out the forms, they don't have the money to file the forms. So this is a fix for that. And again, know your rights and family presentations, family preparedness. That's the bulk of our work at this stage. The judges can be, as I mentioned, it's a separate track from what happens with ICE, but now judges who rule too often in favor of immigrants are being fired. And judges who are themselves immigrants are being fired. 2 were fired last week. So we just see a gathering of ever darker clouds, and the avenues for help and hope are narrow. A judge last week in New York told a courtroom full of litigants to be careful, that the courthouses are now traps for deportation. So do you go to court and be arrested, or do you not go to court and have a warrant issued for your arrest? You know, it's really there's no good answer, and this is why we're looking at voluntary departure for many people. We have one upstate ministry, rural and migrant ministry, that works with farm workers, and they experienced a raid last week in Cato, New York. 70 individuals affiliated with their programs were detained. They came into the workplace, they marched them onto buses, and removed them from their families. So Father Richard Witt, who runs that program, and his staff have spent days retrieving belongings from the place of work, connecting with the families, providing support in the best way they can. So it's not just in our city, it's throughout our state that we see migrants living in fear. And just going back to what we knew, I thought this prediction back in May 2024 was quite apt. He vows to deport millions of migrants. Could he really do it? It's going to be a mess, one immigration expert said. And we really are in a mess right now. So we have put together as many resources as we can for legal help, for social services, for protection for parishes, and just pastoral support. And there's going to be a fair at 12:15 today where you can learn about many of these initiatives. Christina Brandt-Young's done an incredible job putting that together. So if you feel called to help in this effort, please do come to the fair, and I'll be there. And I have no idea what time it is. I'm so sorry. But maybe there's time for a question.
Mary, thank you so much.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us, thank you so much for the truly tireless and heroic work that you are doing with the Diocese of New York and helping us as faith communities all to be engaged in this work. We do have some time for questions as the question cards come in. I want to thank, in addition to Christina Brandt-Young, our Migrant Welcome Committee, newly formed, consisting of Christine Alley Call, Leslie Tilley, Rob McKinney, and Keith Reinhard as well. We warmly invite you to come back for the fair. And a shout out as well to one of our other diocesan chancellors, Patrick Cheng, the Reverend Patrick Cheng, for being with us today. Welcome to St. Bart's. Lots of questions.
Oh, okay,
so
good.
We'll just jump right into it. One person asked if there are other faiths doing the same kind of work to be sanctuary spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. The Interfaith Center of New York, which is run by Reverend Dr. Chloe Breyer, I mentioned her during my talks, helps coordinate a group called Equipping Houses of Worship. And we meet every Thursday, and there are representatives from every faith in this city. There are imams, there are rabbis, there are Episcopal priests, there are Protestant, and of course our Catholic counterparts also are very, very strong in protection of their immigrant parishioners. But the answer is yes.
Another question, you likened the current state almost to a terminal illness or hospice care. There's not much left that we can do in some circumstances. And so, sometimes churches like St. Bart's might be reluctant to begin a new program because of the risk of kind of raising the flag and becoming targets by suddenly promoting a new program for immigrants to come to. And this person asks, therefore, what risk does Sanctuary Church have once an immigrant comes through the doors, whether for food or clothing or housing?
So if your parish provides those services generally, you have really almost no risk. The policy of the diocese is that we do not ask people what their nationality is, where they come from. We ask, are you hungry? Do you need clothing? Are you safe? And we answer those questions. We're not here as parishes to provide refuge, from in the old-fashioned way of the constables running after you. That is where a parish and the individual could get into difficulty. If you knowingly harbor a fugitive, that's the legal statute in question, then yes, you are at legal peril. But if you are providing feeding programs and you are trying to figure out how not to make the people and anyone in the feeding program more vulnerable, that is not an offense. Now, feeding programs sometimes have large lines of people out front. So one of the things in our toolkit is information on how to cut down on that kind of risk of having people out milling around on a sidewalk, because that could create an opportunity for ICE enforcement to cruise by and try to check out who's in line, who might be a target. But I will say that it is extremely rare, and I have not yet heard of it, for ICE to have a specific warrant for a specific individual in that, and look for them in a feeding program line or in church. So the risk is really very minimal.
And another important question, I think, noting that we have folks who will be in worship with us this morning who are immigrants and refugees, folks that not only come to St. Bart's for service, but really are part of the worshiping community. Do you expect that immigrants and refugees who are here legally and have green cards will be at risk of deportation?
I don't expect it, but I've seen it happen. It's a shocking abuse of our immigration procedure when it happens. Mahmoud Khalil was a green card holder. So I can't say with confidence that it would never happen, but I think it is very unlikely they would be apprehended while here at worshiping, for sure. And every case is individual. We do have people available through our resources to talk to if someone has concerns. So that any clergy who are aware of someone who needs legal counseling can reach out to me, and I can put them in touch with some of our partners to help figure out what the risk might be, and if there is risk, how to prepare.
We have had some, getting a bit technical, but we've had some instances of hearing about asylum seekers being summoned to court appearances actually on Zoom or web conference. And is the risk with that less than appearing in person, or what should they be aware of? Yeah,
WebEx hearings are a fantastic way to cut down on the risk. And we are encouraging all of our parishioners with upcoming court dates to file to hold their hearing on WebEx. And it's like Zoom. It means they're not physically in the courtroom or the courthouse. So if you're not there, they can't detain you. The problem we are encountering is that increasingly judges are only granting that type of appearance to people with a lawyer. So all of our pro se efforts are not so helpful for the people without lawyers. But it is the best course of action to take.
This question is a bit political in nature, but it says there appears to be no oversight of ICE. Why? Who? Must we depend on their agents, and where is Congress?
Well, I think those are two separate questions, and I can answer the first more readily. There is oversight. ICE is doing exactly what they are being instructed to do. we as a diocese do not care for the decisions they made as a policy because we believe that people are being made to live in fear. But this is a very intentional situation we're in. And for Congress, that's beyond my parameters.
Fair enough.
I will say Dan Goldman was at that press conference. So,
Interesting question. Do we have any information as to what percentage of detainees and deportees are white or from countries such as Ireland or Ukraine?
yeah, I don't have specific numbers on that. Anecdotally, I do know that it is an equal opportunity situation because they're trying to reach these target numbers. But we also know that the Supreme Court just held that simply because someone looks brown and Spanish-speaking is reason enough to detain them, and that is not a risk that's carried by Caucasian immigrants in the same way. But there absolutely are, I just read about an Irish woman who's been here 35 years. She had a $25 check bounce 15 years ago, and that was enough for ICE to put her into detention. So,
where is ICE getting their information to detain these people on a random basis?
I mean, I was not there when AI was installed on all of their computers, but I mean, they seem to be just combing every record. We know that Social Security records, tax records, they've pushed very hard to have access to every source of information about the people who live here. There are many undocumented people who have been eligible for medical care, certainly in New York City, and they try to gain access to those records. There's a lot of pushback, and there have been successes. But I would say the losses are really mounting, and we are beginning to see, we're seeing the effects.
And as we think about sanctuary protections, one person is curious, can a new state law protect sanctuary spaces, supersede the federal law or presidential orders?
Well, that's a very savvy question, and it does get to the authority of a state to set limits on what the federal government can do, and it's kind of at the heart of our sanctuary conflict. The law that we've drafted focuses on the safety of physical spaces that are located within the state of New York, and property law is a state law domain. We have in New York gun laws that prohibit carrying of concealed weapons into what's called sensitive locations. That's what they're called in the gun law bill. So there is a path to argue that this is within the purview of New York State to care for the safety and welfare of its citizens in these spaces, period. It has nothing to do with federal policy, law enforcement, ICE, et cetera. That's not in the bill. The bill addresses protection in physical spaces that are in our state.
And finally, for those out there who may be thinking, well, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a priest, what are some of the most effective things I can do as just a regular old layperson to really make a difference?
Yeah, I always recommend that people sort of know their lane. Like, if you are not a lawyer, you shouldn't feel that you need to immerse yourself in immigration law and try to, help shepherd people through that system. If you're called to do that, there are wonderful opportunities to do so. I think open hearts or hands? Open hands, thank you. We'll be here after, and they are looking for lay volunteers to work with lawyers on helping immigrants navigate their situations. But beyond that, I had someone say to me, "Oh, gee, I have to do something. I don't do anything. All I do is tutor a little 5-year-old boy from Haiti." And I said, "Well, that's an incredible thing to do. That is, that's your path. Double down on that." So there is so much need out there. It almost doesn't matter what you do, just do something. If you want to tutor reading, if you want to help at the food pantry, if, all of the programs that the diocese offers impact these people who are so vulnerable right now. So you do not need to reinvent yourself. You can work harder at what you're already doing, or if you've been on the fence about doing it, jump in. But it all adds up. It all adds up.
Well, it's a wonderful segue into another invitation for you all to come right back here to this same place after the 11 a.m. service, where we will be hearing from Open Hands, New Sanctuary, El Barrio, and Trans Latina Network. You can write a postcard to our lawmakers after the service. You can fill a backpack full of supplies for migrant school children. You can eat a piece of baklava baked by immigrants. Come and share in community together and help us to make a real difference in our community. Mary, thank you so much again for the light and hope that you carry. Thanks, everyone.